My name's Aaron Ralston. My parents are down on Larry Ralston of Englewood, Colorado. Whoever finds this, please make an attempt to get it to them. Be sure of it. I would appreciate it.
Hi, welcome to BookWatch with Leslie H. Snacko. What you just watched was a video of Aaron Ralston, adventurer, amputee, hero. In 2003, he was hiking in southeastern Utah when an accident trapped him in a canyon for 5 days. He had to cut off his own arm and find his way to safety. I have his book here, Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which was then adapted into a movie, 127 Hours, with James Franco. Ladies and gentlemen, I may present to you Aaron Ralston.
Thanks for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure. So, for those who haven't, read your book or seen the movie, could you go over what happened that day?
Well, I'm a real outdoorsman and always have been, even to this day. But usually, I wouldn't be properly prepared for my expeditions. I wouldn't pack the necessary supplies. I would leave places without telling people where I was going. This is exactly what happened on that day in 2003. So, I was descending Blue John Canyon, which is in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. And I grabbed onto this boulder that was already loose. Stupid me, I grabbed onto it while I was descending, and it just fell with me. So me and the boulder were falling down the canyon. I look up after I land, and the boulder's hurling toward my head. So I stick out my right arm out of instinct. It crushes my right arm and pins it against the side of the canyon, and I was stuck.
Ow. Man, that must have hurt.
Yeah, at first there was excruciating pain, but soon after the whole area went numb, partly because the circulation of my arm was completely cut off by the boulder, and partly because the direness of the situation, it set in, and I stopped thinking about anything else.
Unbelievable. So, would you say that the scene from the movie portrays this incident accurately?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's pretty accurate.
Great, so we have the clip. You want to roll it? God, I love James Franco. Wow. Powerful stuff. So, what happened next?
Well, I realized I had two options. Move the boulder or chop off my arm. Obviously, I preferred the former of those two. So, using my rappelling equipment, I somehow constructed this pulley system to try to lift up the rock. I actually got it to attach to the rock. I put all my body weight into the pulley, but it would not lift. I tried so hard. So, it set in. I had to chop off my arm.
Looking at my notes here, and you didn't wait for help. Why not?
Well, this is where all the mistakes that I made really shine through. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, so there was no one looking for me. I would have to wait until the following Monday. Maybe someone at work would realize I'm missing. It would take another 24 hours for them to call the cops. It would take another 24 hours after that for a search and rescue team to be sent out. They didn't even know where I was. They would have to find my truck. And I was running low on food and water. By the 5th day, I was out of both. I had to drink my own urine. I realized I had to chop off my arm ASAP. I couldn't take any more of that urine drinking.
So, how is your mental state with all this?
Well, at first it was a sort of, are you kidding me type of situation. Then it became very lonely. Although I say I'm an outdoors guy, being cut off from society and everyone I knew really drove me crazy. I had a camcorder with me. I would take videos of myself every day, just like the one you saw at the beginning of this show. And actually, the one you saw at the beginning of the show is the only one I've released to public, because the other ones I keep private because they're a little too disturbing. They're of me basically going crazy. I talk to myself, I argue with myself, and I show just all the signs of a person who's been cut off from everything.
So, what was the goal in writing this,
Book? Book.
No, book.
Yeah, I'd say that my goal in writing this was to both share my experience and share how the relationships and connections in my life kept me surviving. They pushed me to do the unthinkable, cut off my own arm to survive. I'd say that this argument could apply to anyone. The people and things you find important in your life make you live day to day. In my case, my friends and family kept me surviving in that canyon. I felt like they were there in the canyon with me, pushing me forward to keep surviving, to re-enter their lives and right any wrongs I had with them. I felt like I was surviving more for them than myself. Another point I try to hit is that you need a connection to society to stay sane. Being cut off from everyone I knew just drove me nuts. I couldn't survive like that. Although I wrote this book to share my wild story, I intended to share these lessons that I learned in the canyon. How I gained hope from such dire circumstances.
I have a clip from
127 hours that you actually helped develop.
Right?
So, I have in my notes that, you know, would you say that it accurately portrays you being cut off from society and dying of thirst?
Yeah, I believe the clip you're talking about also shows the part where I make that system of levers and pulleys that I talked about earlier and fail, obviously.
Great, show the clip.
When I wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without warning, love, bears heavy on my mind. Then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day. When the day that lies ahead of me seems impossible to face, when someone else instead of me always seems to know the way, then I look at you, and the world's alright with me.
God, I love that song. That clip really shows how you were longing for a basic aspect of the civilized world. A nice, cool, refreshing drink. Anyway, in your book, I have in my notes that you don't only talk about your canyon experience, you alternate between that and your various past of your outdoor experiences.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but did you read the book? Oh, alright, anyway, as you were saying, yeah, each chapter I talk about me in the canyon, and then every other chapter, I talk about an experience that I had in my life before that sort of built up to this moment. I talk about how I became such a crazy outdoorsman. I talk about little adventures that I went on when I was little and in my 20s leading up to this moment. I think it shows how I became hardened as an adventurer up to this moment. To become the survivalist I was that went through a process of cutting off his own arm to survive. However, it also shows how I picked up bad habits along the way, like not telling anyone where I was going, not bringing enough supplies.
Personally, I enjoyed the chapter when you were out in the wilderness alone and you had to run for that bear.
Your car, out of food and water.
Yeah, that is quite the scary experience, but it's developed by my canyon experience.
I noticed that you're really, how do you put it, descriptive with your writing. The parts where, you know, the grotesque images that you put in your book really grip me from start to finish.
Thanks. Yeah, I try to include as many details as I can about what I saw, how I felt. I did have to break my arm and saw through it with a dull pocket knife. Although the description is pretty gruesome, I try to put you in my shoes for that. No one can imagine that, so I try to use sensory details to paint descriptions of what happened down there so people can actually imagine it. I like to do things like describe the taste in my mouth after 2 days of having no water and describing that snapping noise when I had to break my arm.
Ugh, man, when I read that, like, I actually threw up when I read that snapping noise.
Are you serious?
Yeah, just thinking about it makes me nauseous. Let's.
Oh.
Alright,
You're
yeah.
gonna be okay.
Yeah, but, I mean, you really put, like, the reader in your shoes when you wrote that. It was very impressive.
Yeah, I added a lot of parts where I kind of invite you into my head. And I talk in second person to myself. I say stuff like, Aaron, you're hopelessly stuck, you're screwed. Or stuff like, Aaron, you have to cut your arm off. It's as simple as that. I'm trying to let you into my head. You know, usually a story about being stuck in the same place for 127 hours would be boring to most outsiders. So I try to use sensory detail, detailed descriptions, and inclusion of those exciting events, at least in my opinion, from the past.
Speaking of interested, would you say that your book should appeal to people other than hikers and adventurers like yourself?
Of course. Obviously, that crowd would be more attracted to the hiking jargon and detailed descriptions of hiking locations and mountains that I sprinkle throughout the book. But there's more to this story than just a lost arm. Anyone can take a lesson from what I experienced in the canyon. How the people I loved and the things I loved and society drove me to do the unthinkable and keep surviving. I think anyone can relate to that, and that hits home for all sorts of different types of people that want to read my book.
Certainly hit home with me. Well, folks, the fire's out, and we all know what that means. That means that that's all we have for today. So, thanks for coming, Aaron.
Thanks for having me, Thanks for having me, Leslie.
Yeah, and, folks, I think that's all I have in my notes for today. So, as always, thank you for watching.